Hi, I'm Bruce, creator of Dad's Castle greeting cards, and in this tutorial we'll create this stylized pine tree using grease pencil, my grease pencil to curves blender extension, and the new Blender 5 array modifiers. The grease pencil to curves extension quickly converts grease pencil strokes to curves, which is often easier than trying to manipulate the curves into the shapes you want. It's great for making base curves for geometry nodes or speeding up the hair curve process. I have several videos for using the add-on, but also check out my tutorials for creating stylized toon eyes with geometry node eyelids and eyelashes. I also offer a collection of toon eyes on both Superhive and Gumroad. In this video, we're going to use techniques similar to my previous stylized tree tutorial. However, in that one we didn't have an array modifier that would act on the grease pencil. So it didn't really matter because it was big fluffy, is that a word? I don't think that's a real word. Anyway, big fluffy bunches of leaves. And in this case, with the pine tree, it's a little more noticeable if you don't line up with the branches. And that wasn't possible for Blender 5. Now with Blender 5, the grease pencil objects can use the same array modifiers as the mesh objects. So in essence, we will copy the twig or the branch modifiers to the twigs so they all line up correctly. So let's get started. To install the brushes we'll use for this tutorial, download the Dad's Castle Pine Brush Pack from the link provided in the description. Unzip it and you'll see two different blend files, a 7-pack and a 20-pack. 7-pack is what we use in the tutorial. It has all the main brushes I use. The 20-pack is all the same brushes, just some variations on a theme. Some are different scale, rotation, maybe a different angle for the pine needles. But unless you're doing close-up work or different types of objects, you're really not going to notice a difference. So for this tutorial, we'll stick with the 7-pack. So we'll copy that. Then we'll move to wherever your Blender software is installed. In this case, on a Windows machine, I have it under Program Files, Blender Foundation, Blender 5.0, or whichever version you're using. It might be 4.0 or 4.5. But you'll find the folder that gives the version number. Double click on that, go to Data Files folder, Assets, Brushes, and now you'll see all the essentials, and those are the brushes that show up whenever you go to your essentials catalog in the grease pencil. So we'll simply paste our file here, and there we have it. So whenever you open up your essentials catalog, now you'll see the Dad's Castle pine brushes available to use. Okay, next we need to install the Grease Pencil to Curves Blender add-on. To do that, click on the Edit button, go down to Preferences, click on the Get Extensions button, and in the search bar just type Grease, look down your list, and you should find Grease Pencil to Curves. Click on the Install button, and then once it's installed you can save and close your preferences. Then to test to see if it's installed, press the N on the keyboard to get up your side panel, look down and you find a tab, Grease Pencil to Curves. And that's really all there is to it, and we should be ready to go. Okie dokie. We'll start with making the trunk first by just drawing one half of the trunk and then converting that to a 3D object. So we'll start. I've opened up a Blender 5 file. We will delete our default cube. Press 1 on the numpad for a front view. Okay. Then Shift A, and we will add a grease pencil blank. Then we'll tab into the draw mode. And I'm just going to select the basic pen. So we'll just start at the top there and draw going straight down, something like that. I'm going to make that a little straighter. Let's go down. There we go. But we don't want to cross the x-axis at the bottom or the z-axis at the top. Press N on the keyboard. Select the GP to Curves tab, and then click on Convert GP to Curve. Okay. Then to give it some 3D, we will click on the Modifier Properties tab. Select Generate, Screw. And there we have our tree trunk. However, if we try to apply this, it will give us an error. So what we need to do is go to the Object first, Object, Convert to Mesh. And now we have our tree trunk. Let's rename this in the outliner to trunk. And then we will press the M key new collection. Call this tree, create. And now we have our tree trunk in the new collection. I'm going to make this just a little thinner, so let's press S for scale, Shift Z to not make it taller, and just thin that up a little bit. There we go. That's our tree trunk. But a tree needs branches. We could do the same thing for the branches, but we will instead just make use of the trunk we already have. So we will Shift D to copy it, right click to keep it in the same place. We will hide our original trunk in the outliner. We'll rename this one to branch, and then scale it down to maybe, I don't know, a couple of blocks there. All right. Now branches aren't perfectly smooth like that toothpick, so what we'll do is give it a little bit of character. Let's click on the tab and go to sculpt mode. Let's grab a grab brush there. F to make this brush a little bigger. F and drag. I'll make it a little bigger still. And we just want to dent it a little bit. Give it some shape, a little character. Press the 3 on the numpad so we get the other direction, so it's not just all in one direction. There we go. Tab out of that, back to object mode. And then we can actually do the same thing to the tree trunk, so we can bring that back, hide the branch, and we will zoom out some, select the tree, move into sculpt mode, make our brush even bigger still, and just kind of dent a little bit. We kind of just push it around a little bit, back and forth. We don't want to make anything drastic because the tree is fairly straight. It's just we don't want it perfectly straight. Okay. Tab back into object mode. We'll hide our trunk for the moment, bring back our branch, zoom in, and we'll select our branch. And this is where we use our new array modifier in Blender 5. So we will click plus, add modifier, generate array, make sure it's the new one, not the legacy. And it's in a line. We'll see the shape is line. And so we don't really want the line of branches. We want a circular ring of branches to radiate out from the center of the tree. So we'll, on the shape, we'll click line and then choose circle. And there they're a bit twisted up. But on the radius here, let's move this radius and move it out some. And press 7 from the numpad to get the top view. So we can see there it's moving out, but our branches are not facing the right direction. So what we'll do is over here in the align rotation, we will now change this to say X and then Y instead of Z. And here it's showing horizontal now on the branches, but when we change the radius, the max we can go is all just together, which isn't terrible. I mean, it will still work if we just keep it the radius at 0. But what we'll do instead is we'll change this forward axis to Y and the up axis to X. That way, when we do our radius, we can adjust that to the thickness of the tree trunk. All right. So that's looking good. But if you notice that they're kind of oval now, they're not looking nice and round like they used to be. And that's because we did not apply the scale and rotations. So let's go back, let's hide this modifier, and then go back to our limb here. If we click on item, you'll see that the scale has not been applied. So we'll go Control A and apply scale. So now when we click on our modifier, now it's looking more round like it should be. All right, let's make this branch count up to say 8. And we'll bring back in the radius again, a little closer. But when we do a side view, pressing 1 on the numpad, we see that it's, you know, they're pretty even. So we want a little bit of variety on this tree. So let's click on this randomize feature. And now we can see the offset and rotation and scale. So we'll be making use of all 3 of those. But on the offset, if we click on the Y, up here we did the central axis as Z. And so we want maybe a little bit of offset there, not a tremendous amount. I'm going to put it maybe, I don't know, 0.4. Let's go with 0.4, or maybe even 0.35. Let's go with 0.35. That'll give us a little bit of variety there. Now if we offset the Y, we see we kind of missed the tree, so we won't do that one. And if we offset the Z, we also miss a tree on that one. So we'll just leave those at 0. Now we can add a little bit of rotation in. If we rotate the X, it's better from seeing at the top. If we rotate the X, we get a little bit of variance in that direction. So let's give that maybe, we'll give that a 5. A Y, we get a little bit of tilting up and down. So let's give that maybe 10. And do you want to go that high with that one? Maybe we'll go 5 as well on that one. And then Z doesn't do a whole lot there. Rotates it a little bit along the length of the axis, but let's give that maybe a 10. Okay, so that doesn't do a whole lot, but there we have some nice variety in our branches. Press 1 on the num key. Let's bring back our trunk. And we're still a little bit wide on the radius, so we'll bring that down so they match the tree. Now, we don't want these branches, you know, growing right out of the base of the tree. So we need to lift it up a little bit. So let's press GZ and just give it maybe 2 meters. Enter. I'm going to scale down that trunk a little bit. Let's hit scale, bring that down a little smaller. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now also these branches are still going horizontal, and the tree, let's give a little bit of an angle to them. So we will hide our array modifier, press 1 on the numpad to get a forward view again. Hide the trunk. Now let's rotate this in the Y direction, say by 20 degrees. Now that looks very steep, but remember, based on our array modifier, we're actually moving up from the horizontal. So let's apply that. Don't forget to apply it. Apply rotation. And now let's go back to our modifier, click on that. Now our tree branches are sticking up. What would have happened if we didn't apply that modifier? Let's Control Z. If we didn't apply the modifier, the whole branch series would be tilted. So that doesn't help us. So let's go ahead and Control A, apply rotation. Now we have all the branches there. So now that we have our first ring of branches, we need to add another array modifier to add them up the tree. So we'll click on plus, add modifier, generate array. We see these are going horizontal in the X direction, which doesn't help us. We need it to go in the vertical direction. So we'll first minimize the original array. It is a line shape, we do want that, but on the X direction, we'll make that 0. And then Z direction, we will make that 1. And so you can see it's going up the right way. Let's bring our tree trunk back. Okay. And then we can adjust this Z offset to move it up. So let's add maybe the count to 6, so we get 6 sets of branches. Bring this Z down a little bit. There we go. So this is looking like a very straight vertical clump of branches. So let's give it a little bit of shape by going to the scale, and let's make this 0.9. And now it looks a little more shapely going in. Okay. And then they all look again the same, particularly if we look from above. That's pretty organized. We want some variety here as well, just like we did with the original ring. So we'll click on our randomize. Now if we offset the X, we miss the tree trunk, so that one's useless. Same kind of deal with the Y, we can't see it. But the Z, we can make a little bit of variation in the Z, so maybe about a 0.3 there. That's not, looks pretty good. And then our rotation, we can give a little bit of a X rotation, maybe do say 10% there, and Y, we can give some variety rotation there, maybe another 10%. And then the Z, give it a little bit, but let's look from the top. We'll press 7 on the keyboard, look straight down. And let's say enter 20 for Z, it's not enough. 40 for Z, not enough, but it's getting closer, so let's just go ahead and press 90 for Z. Now we have all the branches. Okay, so that gives us quite a bit of variety in our tree. Okie dokie. Next, let's add some shading to this. In the description, I provided a link to download a stylized tree bark, so that's what I will use here, but you can use whatever material you want. Click on the trunk. Let's go to our shading tab. Click on the caret there for material. Just bring this down a little bit where we can see it. Okay. Make sure you have the node wrangler enabled. Then we'll click on the BSDF node, hit Control-Shift-T, and that will bring up an Explorer menu. Then click on I have it stored in this textures directory, and we will click on the normal, the AO, the color, the height, and the roughness. Click on that button there, and that gives us our stylized tree. It sets up all the textures automatically. I'm going to go to the scale down here on the Y. I'll just adjust that a little bit. There you go. Now we will shift click. Actually, we'll click on the branches, then click on the shift click on the trunk, and click Object, Link Transfer Data, Materials. So now our branches have some materials as well. Okay, looks a little bit like a snake skin there, so I'm going to duplicate this material and adjust this downward a little bit, maybe. Oops, escape. We need to highlight just the tree branch, and we will move this down a little bit, scale maybe down to 0.7 on both. There we go, 0.3 on that one. All right, good enough. No, that looks awful. Let's go to maybe try 0.6. All right, good enough. So we'll click on Layout, go back to our viewport shading mode, and there we have our basic pine tree. So the next part, we will make the twigs to add to the pine tree. Before we start into creating the twigs, I just want to give you a quick look at what the different brushes look like in the pine tree pack. So if we click on this first one, it's a thick pine needle. I'll make it F, make my brush a little bigger. The second one is same thing but thinner. The third one is sort of a double, make that bigger, sort of a double needle, kind of good maybe for garland. The fourth one, kind of the fifth one here. Fifth one is kind of interesting. It gives sort of a watercolor or at least a painterly look on the tree when it's finished. The spruce one is the one we'll actually use for the tutorial. And then this gives it just a single twig of spruce on this last one, which gives a different look. So all of these give sort of a different end look. And so you can play around, experiment, and see which one you like the best or whichever style you want to create. All right, so let's go back and create some twigs. So to do that, let's hide our tree collection there for a moment. And we'll click on Scene Collection in the outliner and add a new collection. And we'll call this one Twigs. Okay. Now we'll Shift A and add a mesh, and a UV sphere. Let's bring that up. And actually I'm going to bring the tree back just for a moment so we can scale this sphere down a lot smaller. Something about like that maybe. Okay. Then we can hide our tree trunk now again. actually our whole tree collection. The sphere will form the shape that we attach all of our twigs to give it some volume. So let's first shape this a little bit. We'll tab into sculpt mode. We still have our grab brush, and so we're just going to grab this and go out both directions a bit with it. Make it kind of long and skinny. Alright. Might have to tab, object, might have to scale this down a little bit again. I'm going to bring the tree back. We want this to be about a little less than the length of a tree limb. Hide the tree again. Alright, let's hit Shift A, bring in a grease pencil blank. Then we'll tab into the draw mode. And now we'll see our various brushes down here on our asset shelf. And we are going to select the Twig Spruce 01. Zoom in a little bit. And we just want to tap this around, but notice we can't see anything. And the reason for that is we need to click origin. Instead of origin at the top, we want our strokes to be on the surface. So now when we tap around the surface. Now we don't want to go too crazy here. We don't want to draw it, we just want to tap it. And we'll just do a few like that, maybe one more there. Alright, now let's change the color. Add maybe a lighter one in there. The lighter ones tend to have quite a bit of effect, so I'm usually not quite as liberal with adding those. And then let's go with something maybe a little darker here over at the top, something more traditional pine dark. And that one I'll be maybe and we don't care which way, this is stylized, we don't care which way these are laying per se. We're just going to tap them around. Alright, that gives us a good bunch of twigs. We need something on the end there. Okay, let's go with that. Press 1 on the numpad, and we will rename this to twig. Alright. Tab back into the object mode. We have another grease pencil in there. I'm not sure where that came from, but we will just hide that. Take off the camera. So we have this twig. So we will hide the sphere, and we will bring back our tree. And in particular, we want to line this up with those branches. So to do that, we will hide the trunk, click on the branches, and we will turn off the array modifier. And so for these twigs, let's rotate it Y 90, enter. Now our branch is up, we can see is up 2 meters. So we want to make the same for our twigs, so we'll click GZ2. But we want to line it up on this branch a little better, so we'll tab into the edit mode because we want to keep the origin point the same as the branch. Press A for all the strokes, then GZ, and we'll move that up somewhere in there. Still might be a little big for this, so we might need to scale that down some, but we'll see what it looks like at the end. Okay, tab back into object mode, rotate Y20 I think is what we use for that branch, and we did. And there we go, now we have our twigs on the branch. Now the beauty of Blender 5 is we can use those array modifiers that we had on the branch for the grease pencil object, which we couldn't do before in the earlier versions of Blender. So let's click Shift, click on the branch, and Object, Modifiers, Copy Modifiers, Selected Objects. Now, this isn't going to work right, and I'll tell you why, because we click on that branch, add those modifiers, click on the twigs, activate the modifiers, and it's going the wrong way. That's because we didn't apply that rotation and scale. So that's always important to do. So we will now apply Control A, rotation and scale. So now we add the modifiers. They line up better with the branches. Bring our trunk back by unhiding the trunk. But they're not lined up completely, so we do have to make a little bit of adjustment on the second array for the Z-axis. Oops, that's the randomize. I don't want to change the randomize. We'll do the Z-axis here. So move that up till they line up. There we go. Now the top of our tree is looking a little bit bare up there. So what we'll do is we'll Shift D, duplicate these twigs, right click to put them in the same place, and we'll eliminate the modifiers there. Now you can see it hidden down here. We'll rotate Y -20 to bring it back vertical. GZ, we'll move it up there at the top. And we'll rename this twig, maybe a topper. Alright. And there we have our nice looking pine tree. So we can now add some light to it. It's a little tall. If we want, we could scale the whole thing down a bit. But let's first find a view that we like. We'll go into the viewport shader rendered view. This light, let's GZ bring it up a bit. And we'll click on the light data and let's make that an area. And that gives us an interesting look there. I pick our camera view. Now we may need a sun type light to make it look correct for, say, an anime sky texture or some of the landscaping. So we will click on our light, Shift D, right click to keep it in the same place, and then we'll rename our new light Sun, and then we'll create it and click on the sun type. Now it's very bright there, so we'll bring that down to say like 2. Gives us a little extra lighting on the trunk there, gives us a little more contrast, makes it a little nicer. Now let's, if we like this view a little bit, maybe right in there somewhere, we want to line up our camera with that view. So we'll click View, Align View, Align Active Camera to Selected. But I don't have the tree selected. So let's now try that again. View, Align Active Camera to View. How about that? Rather than selected. Hit the Shift tilde, then the S button will bring that back a little ways. Alright. And there we have our stylized pine tree. Now a little bit about rendering. Grease pencil, we need to add some depth to it because this is a 2D flat object on the different strokes. So what we'll do is we will go to our layer, our view layer menu, and click depth here. Now you can render it without that, but you just won't see the sort of the tree limbs hidden inside a little bit. Here you can kind of see the tree limbs peeking through. But if we hit F12, and actually before we hit F12, see this grease pencil object originally, I'm going to take the camera off of that. And with the twigs, we want to take the camera off of our sphere so those don't show up. Now we'll press F12. And you can see that we see some of the tree limbs in there, where if we disable that depth, hit F12, all the limbs are completely hidden. So it just depends on what kind of look you prefer. And it'll also depend on, the lighting will depend on what types of background you have, what kind of ground you use. So you have some options there to make it look really nice. But there's our stylized tree. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and I hope you have fun playing around and experimenting with the different options of the different types of twigs, different size shapes of tree bunches, if you will, or twig bunches. So click the like button and subscribe. and have a great day.